Hello, my lovely people, and welcome to Owen's Mind, a light-hearted trip through the contents of my head and the world in general. And here is what is on my mind today. So yes, I know I'm a little bit late to the party, but Zack Snyder's Justice League is finally going to get released. So for the two people on the planet who don't know the story of this, the original Justice League movie was released in UK theatres on the 17th of November 2017, and there is a lot to unpack in regards to production of this movie. So Zack Snyder was coming off Batman v Superman, and he was doing Justice League. Now, Batman v Superman hadn't been received particularly well. People thought it was too long, and the tone was far too dark. So Warner Brothers mandated that Justice League itself needed to be lighter in tone, and they curtailed the runtime. But we'll get to that in a minute. So Zack was well on with production. He'd shot loads of hours and hours of footage, but then he suffered a very personal loss. His daughter died in tragic circumstances, and he had to step away from the project. So Joss Whedon was brought in to finish it and to retool it a little bit to fit Warner Brothers' vision. They had seen Snyder's cut and they didn't like it. They weren't happy with it, and apparently it was nearly a 4-hour cut. Now, Warner Brothers themselves learned the wrong lessons off Batman v Superman, because what they learned was that the audience doesn't want dark and doesn't want a movie that's too long, neither of which is true. It just has to fit. Many movies are 3 or 4 hours long, like Wolf of Wall Street, 3.5 hours, and if it's a compelling narrative, it's fine. If you can keep your audience hooked. They didn't learn that lesson, so what they said was, no, Justice League cannot be any longer than 2 hours long. This was what they mandated. The problem being, if you know that going into the movie, before you even start writing the script, you can tailor the story to be told in 2 hours. If that instruction comes further down the line, when the movie's already in production, it's already been done, the only way you can now fit that is to chop out story elements, because it wasn't written with a 2-hour runtime in mind. You wrote it, this story from A to B is this length, whatever length that is. If you've then got to chop that back, you're going to miss things out. You cannot, omit certain things to get it down to that runtime without losing something. So that's what happened. So yes, there's a whole lot going on. There's pages and pages and pages on the but essentially Justice League itself had a bit of a trouble birth, and it was released and it didn't do too well. In fact, as this shows, it was the lowest grossing DCEU movie up until that point, grossing worldwide 655 million, which is not a failure by any stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't the billion-dollar film they expected it to be. So almost immediately we started hearing, release the Snyder Cut. Hashtag release the Snyder Cut. With the fan base saying, those who did enjoy Batman v Superman and like Snyder's tone, going, you know what, there's a cut of his movie out there. He left the project unceremoniously. He left because he had very personal reasons to leave. But he has a cut of the film and we want to see it, because they weren't happy with what they got. Now, Justice League itself was very mixed reviews because it was a clash of tones. Because Joss Whedon, very accomplished filmmaker, Zack Snyder, very accomplished filmmaker, but they approached things in a very different way. And you could see where it was mashed together. And then add on top of that the fact that they had to chop loads out to hit this mandated runtime. And if you see the original trailer for Justice League, there is so much footage in that which is not in the final movie. So, we got this movement, release the Snyder Cut, and there was varying arguments about what the actual state of the Snyder Cut was. Most people agreed there was one, but there was a huge debate, very vocal and very vicious, toxic kind of to and froing between, is there a final finished movie that Zack Snyder has somewhere, or is there just like an assembly cut? Zack has now confirmed what exactly the Snyder Cut is at this point, which we'll get to. But at the time, it was like this huge thing. But everyone seemed to agree there was one out there, and that people wanted to see it. And like I say, there was a big argument between, it's just, it's unfinished, and it's this, and it's that, and the other, but everybody wanted it. And now, almost 3 years later, we are going to get it. So there was an announcement during a live stream that Snyder did, a live watch through of Man of Steel, that Zack Snyder's Justice League, as it is now called, is going to be released on HBO Max in 2021. So yeah, he confirmed that, and he said Warner Brothers and HBO Max have given him $20 to $30 million to finish the movie. Now, in an article, he actually said that as it stands now, it is essentially just an assembly cut. It is all the footage he shot that he wanted edited together, but it's not been color corrected. It's not had the sound design done. There's no, a lot of the visual effects are missing, so it needs a whole lot of work doing to it. So we now know that there was a Snyder cut and that it is literally just an assembled cut of the actors on set with green screens, and so it all needs to be finished and polished, which is now going to get done. He said the movie itself is something, there's a bit of debate whether or not it's going to be up to sort of 4 hours and it's going to be released as a single movie, or if it's going to be released episodically in regards, you know, like maybe 4 1-hour specials or 8 half-hour shows, whatever it turns out to be. And that creates its own problems as well, because if it's just a 4-hour movie, brilliant. If it's episodic, which again I'm fine with, but you need to have a logical end point to one episode and a start to another. Now, if it's been written as a complete movie, it might be hard to find those points and make it look natural between episode to episode. So we don't know, but the kind of the takeaway is that we are getting it, which is a good thing. Now, I've just put together a little list of kind of pros and cons, because there is a lot of good stuff to have with this. There's a couple of cautious things, but for the fans, there's very little on the downside. So let's get into it, the kind of pros. First and foremost, if you enjoyed the original Justice League, no one's taking that away from you. That is yours forever. So anybody worried, like, you know what, a lot of people had a good time with I enjoyed Justice League. I thought it was a bit of a hot mess, but I had a good time with it, and I've watched it several times. I can see there's issues with it for me, but some people really love the film, and great. I'm glad that you really love the film. You know, you absolutely, I'm not going to tell anybody they're wrong for enjoying art, because art is subjective. I can't judge it and say it's bad, because it's your taste, and if you love it, brilliant, I'm glad you love it. So to those people, no one is taking that away. Once this is released, the Snyder cut is released, that Justice League does not become irrelevant, it does not disappear, it is yours forever. Just like when they remake any movie, those who are sort of passionate about the original say, oh, they shouldn't make a remake. Let them make a remake. If you don't like it, you have the original. If the remake's good, you have that too. Same here. So no one is taking it away from you. Plus point number 2, we now get a single director's vision. So we're now going to get Zack's story. We're going to get it how he intended it to be seen, how he intended it to be visualized. Now, like I say, Joss is a very, very accomplished director, as is Zack, but they didn't work together. Those tones, because they're very different, didn't mesh in Justice League, for me personally. So now we're going to get Zack's vision. So rightly or wrong, we're going to get one man's story. So it should feel more, it should flow better, it should feel more like a complete narrative, as opposed to, you know, 2 that were kind of smashed together unceremoniously after the fact. Plus point number 2, Zack's now has some objective distance from it. You know, in the moment, when you create something, if you write a song, or you make a movie, or you write a book, whatever it happens to be, when you're kind of in it, you know, day in, day out, you can get a little bit lost. Can't see the wood for the trees kind of thing. There's now been 3 years where some of the, you know, maybe the criticism he took over Batman v Superman has faded. The whole debacle about Justice League itself, and of course the tragic loss he suffered, all of that is now, it's a bit more in the past. So we can look at this objectively now, and maybe to get a fresh take on it, going, this is my cut originally, this is what I did in 2017, but looking at it now, you know, maybe this can be trimmed, or maybe this can be moved, or maybe that can be tightened up, or maybe this should be allowed to breathe a bit more. So he's got that distance. So excellent. Can only be a good thing. Good thing number 3, he's not curtailed by runtime. He can now release it how he wants it, how he intended. Zack has always been good at long form storytelling. So like the ultimate cut of Watchmen is like 3.5 hours. And again, you can argue, well, it's unnecessary, it's not, but Justice League itself was written as this long form movie, and then he was told afterwards that it needed to be chopped. So the story is now going to be told how he intended it. So hopefully it's going to have the pacing, and it's going to be allowed to breathe where it needs to, and it's going to be allowed to move where it needs to, and he's not going to be mandated to, like, well, no, it's half an hour too long, so chop that, chop that, chop that, and then you miss bits of the narrative. Excellent. And the last good thing is that there's no consequence now, because the DCEU has moved on after the financial failure of Justice League, which it wasn't a financial loss, made money, but not what they wanted. The DCEU was very much already moved away from that template, so we didn't get the standalone Cyborg movie. Henry Cavill is no longer Superman, and those kind of things. So there is no consequence to this being released. And there was even rumours afterwards that the Flash movie, which we were supposed to be getting, I think in 2022 now, there's been a whole lot around that movie as well, was actually going to use the Flashpoint storyline to reset everything and start afresh, because obviously now we have a new Batman. There's no news yet on a potential new Superman, or but essentially they were going to use Flashpoint to reset everything anyway, and then move forward from that point and keep what they thought worked. So I'm guessing which would be Aquaman, because it made over $1 billion. Wonder Woman was very well received. Shazam didn't do financially well, but critically it was received very well. And then so you can carry those bits forward using the Flashpoint storyline and kind of push away what you don't want. So yeah, so there is no consequence to releasing this. It is all good stuff. We get to see the movie, and the DCEU does not have to change based upon it. Okay, so that's all good stuff. It's, for the fans who, for me, I was never sort of really vocal about, I need to see the Snyder Cut, but I was curious about it, even when I knew, because I suspected and I was told many, many times that it was just a production, like a rough cut. I would have been happy to see that, because when they originally said, let's throw it up on HBO Max, somebody suggested it, and you're like, okay, and everyone's like, it's not finished, and other people, no, it's finished. I'd have been quite happy to see it unfinished if they'd put it up and had like Zack doing like a director's commentary, talking over some of the shots and going, there's green screen here, but this was going to be this, and maybe put some concept art, just as out of curiosity of what. It's very rare you get to see. You hear stories about, like Darren Aronofsky's Batman and this kind of thing, and all these things that nearly were, and Superman Lives and all these kind of things. There's little tidbits, but this was actually a chance where you can see this is what released, but this is what it could. This kind of Elseworld story, we could actually have seen it, as it was, as Zack intended, and now we get a step further than that because we're going to see it complete. So yes, so all good stuff for us. There is a few downsides that I see. Again, there's only a couple for fans, for people like us, for the movie-going public. First one is there is so much expectation on this movie now. It's going to be exceptionally hard to meet it. This movie needs to be Citizen Kane, because otherwise people are just going to go, there's so much expectation on it, because people are convinced that this is a far superior movie, and it may well be, but at this point we don't know because we've not seen it. And I just think it's going to be difficult to go in objectively, because fans have wanted this, they've petitioned to it, and they're finally getting it. And I don't want it to be a case of be careful what you wish for, because, like I say, unless it is absolutely, if it's just a good movie, people are going to be like, was it worth the wait? Was it worth this? Was it worth all this petitioning? Was it worth all this money that HBO Max is going to put into it for a good movie? They're going to expect greatness, because they've made it this mythical unicorn of a movie. And I think people are just going to have to temper their expectations and just be happy that we're going to get the movie. And if it's great and if it's good, you should be perfectly happy with that. Don't go into it expecting, The Godfather. So I think that's the only, in regards us, the viewing audience, I think that's the only real downside, that we may have put too much expectation on this movie. The rest of it is kind of more on Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers might end up facing a bit of a backlash, because if this movie turns out to be great, if Snyder's Cut turns out to be considered superior to the theatrical release of Justice League, Warner Brothers are going to get some pushback from people going, look, we told you not to do this, you did it wrong, we told you not to bring somebody else in, we told you not to curtail the runtime, you learned the wrong lessons, and they're going to get a lot of heat from this if it turns out that it's great, rather than getting praise for actually allowing this to happen in the first place. Because this is Zack Snyder's movie. It's not. It's Warner Brothers' movie. They're paying the bills, so it's up to them. So the fact that they're doing this because they recognise that fans want it, and again, they're hoping it's going to push subscriptions to HBO Max as well. So it's not completely selfless. But they didn't have to do this at all. They could say, no, the movie you got is the movie you got, and that's it. So the very fact they're allowing us to have it is a good thing. But yeah, I think they could suffer some pushback, and what they'll make of that, I don't know. You know, like I say, rather than just going at the studio going, look, we should have, you know, this is what the movie should have been. It's like at the time they were dealing with an awful lot of stuff because they had release dates to hit. Zach, like I say, suffered a tragedy, and it's not a tragedy you could have put a timescale on going, well, we'll give him 2 months and then we'll restart production and we'll push the release date. It's like, no, you can't possibly know how this man's going to react. If he's even going to make movies again, you know, it was a life-changing tragedy he suffered. So Warner's they'd put so much into it already, they had to complete the movie. They got a very, very accomplished filmmaker to come in and take over and shepherd the remainder of it, which was Joss Whedon. And then they were said there's a few lessons, rightly or wrongly, they learned from Batman v Superman, which they want to address in Justice League. So, yeah, I don't think they deserve any pushback they're going to get, but I've got no doubt they're going to get some. Another thing they might get is that they might course correct again. So if this movie turns out to be great and everyone loves it, the fans might kick off again and want the DCU back on this trajectory now, which we already know Warners are moving away from. So it might sound far-fetched saying, well, you know, the company's not going to just swerve because fans are saying it. They've been reactionary before. They've reacted to fan pushback and critic pushback before, which is exactly what happened from Batman v Superman to the original Justice League. Batman v Superman is too long, Batman v Superman is too dark. Okay, so Justice League has to be 2 hours, it needs to be full of jokes. That was a very reactionary thing to do. There's different management over there now, years have passed, but I don't want them to fall into that trap again and people now going, the Snyder Cut is perfect, so now we want this back. Whatever it costs, get Affleck back, get Cavill back, because this is the Justice League we should have had, and we want to see the DCEU now move forward from this point as opposed to where it currently is. I don't think that'll happen, but it's just, you know, it's a thought. But on the whole, this is great news. This is fantastic news. We're going to get something we really wanted. We're going to get to see that Elseworld story. We're going to get, you know, fans are going to get something they've really wanted. You know, now this often doesn't happen. I mean, the only recent example I've got is Sonic the Hedgehog, the Sonic redesign, which worked beautifully, as far as I'm concerned. The original one, I didn't have a huge problem with it, but I cannot deny that the new design I find far more appealing and far better than the old one. And my kids feel the same. They don't like the original design in the first Sonic trailer, but the redesign really works. And that was largely due to fans going, what? Now the production company probably thought, well, there's so much negativity now, we will do this because we don't want the negative press. They probably didn't do it to please their fans, they did it because they worried it was going to hit them financially, but there was such a negativity about the movie. But either way, the fans said, we don't like this, and the movie makers thought, okay, let's fix it, and they did. So it's a little win, and now this is the same sort of thing. You know, the fans are going, look, we really want this. So Warners have said, okay, you can have it. And they're going to stump up 20 or 30 million, which is no small amount of money, even for a big company. And they should be applauded for that. And like I say, if this movie turns out to be fantastic, enjoy it. But please, you know, try and avoid the whole, I told you so, we know better than you, Warner Brothers, we told you it should have been like this, and we told you, we knew all along that Zack's version should have been the one that got released in theatres, and it's like they were dealing with an awful lot. They were reactionary to certain things, but yes, overall, they did what they had to do to get the movie into theatres in regards all the kind of fury and problems that they had around the movie. So the fact that they're giving you this, enjoy it, don't come down on them going, oh, well, you know, we told you. It doesn't need any of that. So just enjoy it. We're going to get it, we're going to see it, and all these people who've been going, look, we need the Snyder Cut, we need the Snyder Cut, pay for it, go and see it. Pay for your HBO Max and go see it. Don't have all of this 3 years of petitions and then don't stump up the cash to actually support it. Otherwise, what's the point? What's it all been for if you're not actually going to, now that you've got what you want, that you're going to like, well, I'm not going to pay for it. Yeah, pay for it. Let's see it. Anyway, so that's my thoughts, guys. I've left this to the end of the video, but yeah, I've not been online for a week or two, and it's just my usual kind of uploads are always about stories of positivity and good things happening in the world, because that's what I like. A little bit of silliness to kind of lighten the mood. The thing is, the mood has been so dour with all the coronavirus stuff that it's very hard to find positivity and positive stories. They are out there, but it's not been as easy for me. And on top of that, there's some things that have changed in my life, which I'm not going to talk about here. Not bad things, but just things that have kept me busy and kept me away from this. So I wanted to do this, just a nice little video to kind of ease myself back into it. Hopefully uploads will kind of come a bit more frequently now, and we'll get back to our twice a week, our Sunday and Wednesday, as soon as I can, as soon as there is more good stories to actually bring to you and maybe make you smile a little bit. But anyway, that's it for now. So those are my thoughts. They're not necessarily right, they're not necessarily wrong, they're just what's on my mind. So until next time, bye for now.